So you believe that business plans are an absolute waste of time. Why do you believe that?
Because we are trying to forecast a future, sometimes for 5 years. And I'll tell you, if you can forecast the future for one day, go in the stock market, you're going to be a billionaire. So a lot of these hypotheses, ideas, and concepts don't come true. And therefore, most business plans just sit on the shelf. Now, don't confuse this to say don't plan. I think planning is very important, but we need a dynamic planning. I believe in tacking. It actually just happened right prior to this recording. At the end of each quarter, every 90 days, we sit down and we write a new 90-day plan. So traditional business plans are a waste because they don't have much benefit in the long term, almost none, and they're more of a distraction than anything. But short-term iterative planning, by all means, works.
When you started your first business, did you write a business plan?
I did.
Do you remember back?
I did. And I was like, I'll be a billionaire within 5 years. And there's a couple of funny elements is my projections were quote unquote pessimistic, but I was going to be a billionaire. The second thing was I had this board or team that would help me out. And I listed off all these people and the influence they have. No one showed up. No one helps out. And I don't mean that against them. Everyone has their own lives to care for. So that dream team is you, the person who started the business. And within a very short period of time, new competition that wasn't there before had appeared. New opportunities had appeared. Old competition had gone away. Old opportunities had gone away. So I had to dynamically adjust. What I thought I would sell wasn't selling. So that business plan just sat on the shelf. And that's where I learned, I have to constantly write mini short-term plans.
I had a friend of mine recently say this. We were talking about an investment, and I was preparing an LOI to acquire a business, and I was just running it past him. What do you think? What do you think? And he said, it's good. He said, but no battle plan outlasts first contact with the enemy. And I thought that's a genius. And I think no business plan outlasts day one of being in business. I mean, you can sit down and write your business plan and have it studied by Harvard professors. You can get Elon Musk and sign off on it. But day one of business, plan's really out the window. I mean, I like what you said. It's a dynamic plan. So now you're doing this every 90 days. Is that something that you've written about in your books, or is that something you learned from somewhere else? How did you learn how to do this 90-day plan?
Yeah, I did write it in my first book that I ever wrote was called The Toilet Paper Entrepreneur. And what I discovered was that there is a sailing metaphor that works perfectly. So sailors use a thing called tacking. And tacking is where you put the X on the map of where you want to go, but you don't take a straight line. You do a zigzag pattern, in part to avoid obstacles and as significantly to capture the winds to use the tide to your advantage. So you go for a distance, say 100 yards or 500 yards, and then you realign the ship to go in the zag. So you did the zig, now you do the zag, and you keep repeating this over and over again. And these boats always get to their destination. They just zigzag their way to get there, and they're optimizing the environment around them. That's exactly what business needs to do.
So we're talking with Mike Michalowicz on the Root of All Success today. I'm honored to have him back. He was on episode number 51 back a couple of years ago. This is episode number 243, so he's on with us again. And I told him pre-show that he's one of my hero authors and he's the author of the number one business book that I recommend to everybody, and that is Profit First, which I think, if I remember the story right, Mike, it was Toilet Paper Entrepreneur. You kind of mentioned this idea of Profit First, and then that kind of turned into its own book. Am I remembering that right? Or
you're nailing it. What's so interesting, Jason, is there is literally only 2 lines or thereabout dedicated to the concept of Profit First in that book. And yet it was the one getting highlighted in the Kindles. It was the ones I was getting inquiries about. So then I was writing for the Wall Street Journal at the time. I wrote an article about it, and I got hundreds of inquiries saying, how do I do this? And give me more insights. And it became very clear from reader feedback that this had to become a book. It was something I was doing for myself. And I was like, this is so obvious. I assume other people are doing this. And then perhaps other people weren't doing it. And that's why I wrote the book.
Well, so Mike has written a lot of books. I don't know what the number. What's the total number of books you've written so far, Mike?
I even lost count. I think it's 11. It's a little bit soft math here, but it's 11 books. It's actually 9 titles. 2 of the books I did revised and expanded. Profit First being one. There was an original edition and then a revised and expanded. Same thing with Clockwork. But for me, it's not like adding a chapter or a paragraph. It's literally a rewrite of the entire book. So I've gone through the writing process 11 times. I have 9 titles out there.
Well, I like your audiobooks too, because you narrate your own audiobooks, at least the ones I've listened to.
Yeah.
And you do this extra stuff. So you read it and you're like, here, by the way, here's what I should have said, or here's a better idea that I didn't write in the book, or here's another thing. I love that because I have a book. I've got a couple books that I've written and I haven't done an audiobook yet.
Oh.
And the reason is because I'm like, I wouldn't say what I said in the first time. And so now I get in the back of my mind, I got Mike saying, well, maybe you should just do it and say whatever you want.
You know what's so important, I think, is I enjoy the books most that I listen to that are read by the author themselves in the nonfiction space, in the business space. And the reason I like that is the author, even if they don't riff or share additional insights, they just have the right inflection. They know why they wrote what they wrote. And when I hear a professional voice, it may sound soothing, but it's almost like monotone. There's no energy behind it. And those books really fall flat for me. So, my gosh, read your own book, Jason. Do it and definitely riff.
All right. So what is the favorite book? I know your new book is always your favorite book, but like all the books,
it really is. I swear.
Out of all the books you've written, like what's your favorite book? What's the one you keep referring to back more than anything else?
The best job I've ever done writing is my newest book. It's called All In. It was the most deepest research and best writing. My favorite book that I've written, just because it still had that edge to it that I allowed myself to have, was called The Pumpkin Plan. There's sophomore humor in there. It's legit my own cheesy humor. It doesn't land with everybody. But that book continues to be a backlist seller. It just keeps on moving and moving. So I'm proud of that book, but I had the most joy writing it and subsequently reading it as an Audible.
Well, you talked about, I forget where I heard you say this, and it might have been the first time I ever heard you on a podcast. And I stumbled across you. I think like most of us, we stumble across people that we like. It's not on purpose, but I was listening to podcasts and you were a guest and you were talking about the profit first concept. And I don't even remember who it was that was interviewing you. And it was like a light and everything happens like, well, what is he talking about? I should be doing this profit first thing. But one of the comments you made, and I want to dig into this a little bit because I now am a coach, speaker, author, podcaster, but you said something in there something to the effect of, I have learned how to make a living being an author and a speaker where most people have never been able to figure that out. And you kind of proved everybody wrong. And you were saying it tongue in cheek and it was kind of funny. But I've tried to book you to come speak at events and I'm glad that you're on the podcast. So I know where your speaker fees are. I know what's going on.
Pretty ridiculous, I think.
But so you've done it. So how did you crack that code? I mean, I know you've got an amazing content, obviously, but how did you crack the code of making a really good income on speaking and writing?
Yeah. I remember the moment that I cracked the code, or at least got the direction. So when I decided to become an author, it truly was and is a calling. And, we can define how a calling is, but I feel this energy that I have to do this. I then said, I better talk to some authors, and consistently was getting feedback saying, are you kidding me? You can't make any money doing this. This is risky. I started asking a good question. I started saying, well, tell me about your experience. And half those people actually were never authors in the first place. They just investigated and said no. So they don't have any practical experience. The ones who were authors and struggling, I said, well, what's the reason you struggle? And they share their insights. Then I came across a fellow, Tim Ferriss, back in, I don't know, this is 2005 or 2006. He had just released a book called The 4-Hour Workweek. I was just working on and completing my book, The Toilet Paper Entrepreneur, and ran into him by coincidence. We had a half hour together. We were both on a TV show together. And I said, hey, Tim, I got a question for you. Can you make money selling books? And he kind of did that like secret look over the shoulder, even though no one's in the room. He's like, are you kidding me? You can get rich this way. And it just changed my perspective. So then I asked the right authors, if you will, the people who were successful doing it, what were they doing? I found some of the secrets. First is put every ounce of your soul into the book, every ounce of your knowledge. It is a standalone piece. What a lot of authors were doing was trying to make it a better business card to, upsell into a service. And it was the people who put everything into it that those books became defining pieces for the consumer, the reader, and they were spreading the word. Secondly is to provide a suite of tools and support beyond the book. So when someone reads a book, if they can't do something in it necessarily, they need access to resources and tools. the more that's available, the more accessible it is. And if it's free, the better, because now you can start building this constituency that's actually doing the ideas. And the last thing is always boil the book down to the essentials, the basic stuff. Complexity, I thought, would be compelling, but it's the exact opposite. The easier it is to do, the more likely people are to do it.
Well, that last part is true. I mean, we all want something simple. Complex has friction, and it leads to leads to people giving up. So you got nine titles, 11 times you've written these books. How do you pour your heart and soul and everything that you are into each one if it's a standalone piece? Do you really have that many new concepts that you're coming up with? I know your books are all different.
How do you come up with all they're all so far in the entrepreneurial space. For the first time ever, it looks like I'm going to be writing a book in the personal finance space. And the reason is, what I do is I pay attention to my readership and say, what do you need now? So many people who've done Profit First and some of the other systems are having success in their business in part because of these books. And then they come back to me and say, my business is successful, but I'm still not. Like my business is making money, but I'm blowing the money personally. How do I get control around that? So the first thing I do is identify, what do people need next? Then I say, does that match up to something that's important to me and I want to learn about? There's probably the most hidden secret I have, if you will. That's probably not the right choice of words. But what I do is when I write a book, I say, do I need to learn about this? Maybe it's something I'm already doing, but really to master it. Because I believe the ultimate reason we teach is actually to learn. So I wrote Profit First, yes, to share that, but really to instill it in the way I behave in my own businesses. I wrote All In about leadership, really to be a much better leader, because I'm a meh leader. I want to be a great leader. How do I do that? So I write the books. But when you write a book, by the way, you're like ultimately accountable. If someone came to me and said, do you do Profit First? I'm like, no way. Could you imagine that there'd be such an incongruency? So I live by these principles. So it holds me accountable. And so I define these books for a learning process for me, something that's really important to me, and it serves the community I'm serving. And then I just devote time to it. So this new book, I'm just in the final iterations of a publishing deal. When this goes live, I'll be well into the book. But I'll spend the next 1.5 to 2 years just writing, usually on airplanes. That's the best writing time for me. At the same time, as I'm writing that book, ideas will pop up that aren't applicable to that book, but could be a future book. So I have probably 25 to 30 concepts that are just sitting there where I'm accumulating data. They're not ready yet. They haven't ripened on the vine yet, but there is a lot more ideas out there that I have.
So with Profit First being my number one, I haven't read all your books, but out of the ones that I've read, Profit First by far to me, because of its practical nature, and it deals with the one thing that we're all in business for, and that's money. Right. Like we can say we want to make an impact, and that's fine. We want to make an impact, we want to make the world a better place. But the reality is, if we made an impact and made the world a better place, but we're broke, we wouldn't do it. We have to do it for money. So Profit First deals with money. Give everybody who may not be up to speed on what Profit First is, just the flyover of, the idea of what it is. Yeah.
This kind of ties into how we started. We talked about, what's nonsense. And I believe business plans are nonsense. I believe there's something actually even more insidious, and it's that profit is the bottom line or the year end or whatever those terms are that we use. We all use this formula: sales revenue minus expenses results in profit. And that is a logical formula, but it does not serve our businesses. There was a study conducted by a major bank. The SBA was involved. In the U.S., I think there's 32 million small businesses. These are companies doing $25 million in revenue or less. That's my company. It's probably some or a lot of the listeners. Most businesses are small business SaaS, but almost all of them are surviving check by check, according to the study, 83%. So at first I'm like, to your point, we all want to be profitable. That's why we started our business. In part was for financial freedom, personal freedom, but none of us are figuring it out. Are we all idiots, or is there something else going on? And I remember just sitting there one day looking at the formula, sales minus expense equals profit. I'm like, holy crap, it's hiding right under our nose. We are told in that formula that profit is the bottom line or comes last. It's the last consideration. And it's human nature. When something comes last, it's not important. Like if you love your family, don't say, I love them so much, I put them last. You put them first. I'm like, my gosh, if we put profit first, that would change the paradigm. So the new formula, the Profit First formula, is sales minus profit equals expenses. Logically or mathematically, it's the exact same formula. The numbers work the same on a logical basis. But a behavioral basis is radically different. Every time revenue comes into your firm, every time there's a deposit, take a percentage as profit, hide it from your business, and the remainder is available to run expenses. That's the most basic principle. There's other principles too, but it's the pay yourself first principle that we use in personal finance applied to business.
Let's take a quick break to thank our amazing sponsors for making this podcast possible.
I finally got it. It's the brand new Relay Bank credit card. So check it out. I'm going to do a little unboxing for you so you can check this out. So here we go. Nice little case. Kind of like the American Express, you know. They're not playing. They're doing it right. Oh, look at this. There's a quote right inside. It says, "Success is having to worry about every damn thing in the world except money." Johnny Cash. That's pretty good. I've not heard that one. Oh, this is nice. A little thing on the back, up to 1.5% cash back, no annual fees or interest, 30-day billing cycle. And there it is. It's the Relay credit card. It's a Visa. So I'm not going to show you my number, but there it is. Look at that. Boom. Go check out Relay Bank. Go to therealjasonduncan.com/relay, and you could start banking with one of the best banks in the world.
Thanks for listening to our sponsors. Now, back to the show.
So I was interviewing a guy yesterday. I do master classes probably 2 or 3 times a month. I record privately for my Exeter Club, my mastermind that I run called the Exeter Club. And the guy that I had in, he was a financial advisor, and he specialized in financial advising for private healthcare firms or practices. And he has a version of Profit First because he was showing me what he does live in the thing. And I went, oh, this is kind of like Profit First. He goes, yeah, it's very much similar. But one of the things he said that I don't think I've ever heard you say word for word, but the sentiment is true. He said, treat profit as an expense. Like it's a line item, it's a budgeted line item. And so what you just said is we got to treat profit. So revenue comes in, treat profit like it has to be paid, and then everything lives. And I think what it does too is it you know, the number one indicator of how much money you make is how much money you need. So if we take the profit out first and we have a deficit on OPEX, we'll make that up. Like it's somehow magically going to happen. But if we don't, we'll lose the profit. The profit kind of flies out the window. And I can say this confidently that had I not been doing Profit First over the last 5-6 years or whenever I started doing, I don't know how long ago it was, I would not have survived. One of my businesses probably would have not survived because Profit First saved me because I had the diligence and the discipline to make sure that I had money in the right spot.
I can affirm that. Same thing with me. If I wasn't running Profit First, I'd be in trouble. I've been doing it for over 15 years. Yeah, I think I'm ground zero for Profit First. I did it before I wrote the book, and I think I'd looked recently. I'm over like 62, I think it was, consecutive quarters of profit distributions, including this last quarter. And we've had some tough, trying times in revenue financially, but Profit First has prepared. I love how your friend reframed it. Yeah, profit is an expense. It's your first and primary expense. That's a cool way of positioning it. The interesting thing, what was that?
No, go ahead.
The interesting, because you pointed out, like, you know, if you don't have enough money for your operating expenses, you're going to figure it out. And that's absolutely true. I study behavioral principles. That's a hobby of mine. I'm not accredited in any form, but I love the concept of understanding our mind, because if we understand how our mind operates, we'll understand our own behaviors. And there's this theory called Parkinson's law. Now, this is not to do with Parkinson's disease. That was a different researcher. This researcher identified that as a resource expands in its availability, we will consume more of it. So the more time, that's a resource, that we have to do something, the longer it actually takes us to get it done. You know, and you probably experienced that. You know, you talk with a friend like, oh, I'll get that to you the next month or so. It takes a full month or longer to get it done. If you tell that same friend the same thing and say, I'll get to you by tomorrow morning, you get it done. It's the constraint time. Well, money works the same way. As a business generates more income and there's more cash flow coming in, it is our natural tendency to identify more expense opportunities and spend that money. So it's almost uncanny, but as revenue increases over time, our expenses are increasing at almost the exact same rate. So what we're doing is we're inserting a wedge of sorts. When money comes in, we take a chunk of that profit, hide it away. Now, if you can't pay your bills, that's your business telling you you can't afford those bills. There's something fundamentally flawed in your business. So I want to post in one of my businesses 25% profit, which is an aggressive profit for the type of industry we're in, but that's what we want to do. So we take 25%. When we can't pay our bills, we say, well, what's wrong? Is there an efficiency issue that we can't sustain this profit? Is there a margins issue? Are we not pricing properly? Is it a cost issue and there's unnecessary cost? So when you take your profit first, it forces you to be critical of the expense elements of your business, the efficiency elements of your business, and address those to sustain that profit. Ironically, if we don't take our profit first, those issues never present themselves because we don't feel the pain. But then at the end of the day, there's no profit left.
The interesting thing about Parkinson's law is that you write about that in the book. I remember reading about that in the book. But there's a second Parkinson's law that most people don't know about, and that is the second law that the same guy, his last name was Parkinson, he said that a luxury once enjoyed soon becomes a necessity. A luxury once enjoyed soon becomes a necessity. That's why you can't buy a car right now unless it has a heated steering wheel, unless it has power windows and door locks. Like, I can't go back. Once I've learned to live with it, I can't go back. So there's two sides of that from a psychological standpoint that I think play into exactly what you're talking about, Mike. And that is, if we train ourselves to not take profit, all the things that we are enjoying in the business, in other words, not having profit, we think that that's necessary.
Yes.
You know, paying for the marketing that we pay for, or paying for the plush office. We think that that's necessary, but it's not. But then you flip that to the other side. The other side is, if we start taking profit first and we start experiencing that luxury of having the profit first, that will become a necessity. And all of a sudden the plush office doesn't matter anymore. And the new car doesn't matter anymore. It's like, I want this profit. So I love there's two laws of Parkinson's coming up with, and I love both of those for the same reasons we're talking about.
Yeah, I never knew that. He shared that's amazing. His name, in case any of your listeners want to know, is Northcote was his first name. A fascinating first name, Northcote Parkinson. And what I think he was referring to is also called loss aversion. So loss aversion is once we possess something, the emotional pain, the behavioral pain associated with losing it is greater than the effort would have been necessary to acquire it in the first place. So to put that in kind of an analogy, I see a shiny red car. I want to own that little sports car one day. I won't work a second job or anything, but it's on my mind. I want. Well, one day somehow I pull it off and I can make that initial deposit. Now the car's in my garage, and say I really can't afford this thing. I get a call from the dealer saying, we're going to reclaim the car. You know, we're going to call back the pink slips. Well, what do? Now I get a second job. Now I take the insurance off and just lock it in my garage. I'm never going to drive it. It's my baby. Once I possess something, I'll go to extraordinary efforts to retain. I won't necessarily go to extraordinary efforts to gain. And that's what loss aversion does. So that's why I assume luxuries become ultimately necessities. So what happens with profit first is the early adoption of it can be kind of rough. If I instantly go to 25% profit, it's going to force me to reconsider, do I need the heated seats? Do I need the plush office? So, and that can be so painful emotionally that people aren't willing to make the cuts, and they say, well, not for me. So we're approaching 1 million, but we're over 800,000 deployments, active deployments of businesses doing profit first globally. And what we found is the ones that successfully do it start slow and they let the system grow. In other words, maybe they target 25% profit one day, but starting today, they only take 1% of the top line as profit and see how they can adjust. And maybe in a few months from now, they adjust that 1% of profit to 2 or 3 and they grow into it. Most deployments we found takes about 18 months, a year and a half for a company to fully roll out profit first and feel comfortable with it. So don't go too fast or too abruptly. It could actually harm you. At least
that brings me to the question about the bank side of profit first. So one of the things you teach in the book is the idea of having these separate bank accounts, one for income, one for operating expenses, one for profit, one for taxes, one for owner compensation. And you talk about setting up these different bank accounts. And if you go to a bank who's not familiar with that, they're going to be like, why do you need all these bank accounts?
Who are you? Yeah.
And you know, and that's a lot of trouble, and there's going to be fees. So there is now Relay Bank, who is a sponsor of my podcast. Very big thanks to Relay Bank and all the team out there. They're fantastic. But people have not heard about Relay Bank. I stumbled on it myself. I had a Profit First professional bookkeeper who didn't tell me about it. I won't tell you who it was.
Why did they tell you? Oh my God.
I don't know. And then I went and found it. And I went back and said, look, and now Relay, I've never liked banks ever. And I kind of really love Relay Bank because Relay, every Monday, I've got it set up to automatically take all of my income, anything that's an income account, and distribute it and leave $50 in the income account just so there's some money in there. But it goes out automatically. Yep. So if I log in on a Monday afternoon, I can go, oh, look how much money's in my profit account. Look how much money's in my tax account. Look how much money is in my account that I get to take out. How did this relationship with Relay Bank start with you?
So I use them. They're my primary bank too, and I have multiple businesses. I've started investing in businesses. We require anyone we invest in goes to Relay. And I'm not just saying I'm such a fan of them. I actually set my own domain to point to them, banklikemike.com, because people forget and they're like, oh, Bank Like Mike. That's it. That's how legit they are. What I love about Relay is they were the first and they are the only authorized bank to deploy Profit First within their system. They worked with me and my team, specifically to ensure they got the system right. Now, what's interesting about Profit First, it's a behavioral-based system. There is a reason we allocate money to multiple accounts. It causes dopamine and serotonin release when you're doing certain things. And ultimately, we want to get into such a routine that it becomes automated. They have automated functions, kind of like a 401k. The best savings mechanism in U.S. history has been the 401k because ultimately you adjust off your net income on your check and the rest of the money kind of gets stored away and then we're blown away how much has been saved up in our 401k. So we emulate that in the Profit First system, and Relay has done it perfectly. The other part is they're constantly listening to the feedback. Hey, here's another feature would be nice. Oh, this is something else that would help us out. And Relay is extraordinarily responsive. And the last thing is they're free checking, free everything. Other banks, I'm not going to name any ones, but I know some people have gone to these major banks and the bank's like, setting up multiple accounts. Are you crazy? No one does that. Profitable businesses do. You're like, we charge a minimum of a $1,000, check, a checking account must have $1,000 or we're going to penalize you. And if there's too many transfers, we're going to penalize you. Like, they're going to penalize you. Relay supports you. That's why I love the bank. It is truly the best for Profit First.
Yes. And it's, everybody needs to go check it out. And if you want to check it out, you can go to therealjasonduncan.com/relay and you can sign up for an account. It's free. And, just like what we've been talking about, it will do all the Profit First stuff for you automatically if you want it to. And it doesn't have to. You don't have to it won't do it automatically unless you tell it to, but you can set up all the accounts you want. They don't charge you anything. It's easy to transfer money in and out. I've got my personal bank that I use for personal checking, and I've got it set up in there as a payee. So when I want to transfer out of owner's comp into my personal bank, I can do that. I can pay vendors directly from the bank. I actually have subcontractors who work for me, and I go in and set them up as a payee, and it'll send them a check. It'll send them ACH. I can do same day wires for only like $5. I mean, Relay is phenomenal. Yeah. So I'm actually having the founder of Relay is going to be on my show at some point. Yeah, we haven't got it nailed down yet, but he's interested in coming on the show, but we're going to get him on the show, talk more about it. But did Relay exist and then you kind of came over to him and said, hey, I think you should do this? Or were they starting a bank and you kind of said, how did they become like the Profit First bank? So
Joseph came to us originally and said, we love Profit First. We've used it as our own business model. So that they use it themselves and said, what can we do? And it took a few iterations and a bit of time, but we got there. What was interesting in this process of trying to get Profit First implemented as we envisioned it, we wanted to make sure they had all the elements. They had the necessary structure already. So we had people doing Profit First saying, hey, I found this bank. And while they don't have the Profit First system perfectly, they have it better than any other bank. And by the way, they're an amazing bank. So it was just inevitable. And it was probably maybe 3 years ago now that we were able to formalize the arrangement. Lawyers talking to lawyers. But then Joseph and he's actually been to my home. We spent time together and we're like, let's get this right fully. And it's such an excellent deployment of it. It's so simple. So that's how it came about.
All right. Well, everybody go check it out. therealjasonduncan.com/relay to check it out on your own. Mike endorses it. If you go to the website, he's there. Like there's a video of him talking about Relay Bank. There's pictures of him. So this is a legit thing. Mike, this show is called The Root of All Success. You've been on before and I've asked you these questions before, but I'm going to ask again. And, you have no idea what you said last time. So I'll be able to go back and say, well, has he got the same answer? So
he's changed his opinion.
So it's not, it wouldn't be lying. It's just context change, right? We put on different lenses as we grow as entrepreneurs and business owners, as leaders, we grow. So to you, Like, what has been the one thing that has allowed you to become successful more than anything else? This is the one key that unlocks success for you.
I think premature action. I'll start moving on something quicker than my contemporaries would say is a safe move. So there's a business idea that came up recently, and we already have a working prototype 4 days in. Not a great prototype, but a working prototype. And no, there isn't adequate market research. There's not adequate, is it a sellable product? I was just wondering, can we even pull it off in the first place? I also wonder, at least for my own wiring, if I did all that research, I may say, I don't have a shot and give up. So that premature move and taking action over thinking through the details actually has served me in most cases, albeit sometimes you can shoot yourself in the foot because you don't know what you're getting into. But I would scare myself if I knew everything that I did. I wouldn't be an entrepreneur if I knew how difficult it was prior to becoming an entrepreneur.
Wow. People say that sometimes, and I say that sometimes too, but do you really think, like, knowing what you know now, like going back and said somebody said, okay, this pill, you're going to be a corporate employee. This pill, you're going to be an entrepreneur. Like you're saying, no, I'm not doing this. This is crazy.
Well, now I know the benefits of entrepreneurship, the amazing freedom and all those benefits. I don't know if I really would have understood it back then. I wanted to be a corporate guy, and it sounded amazing. Predictable income, you get your 2 weeks vacation. It just sounded so good. So I don't know if I've been mature enough to see that fighting through the pain. And, there was a couple dozen years over the 30X years I've been doing this. So a lot of time of struggle, difficulty. And I'm not saying financial. And I'm not saying that's not going to happen again. I have had financial struggles, but sometimes, just exhaustion, working so hard. I don't know if I had the fortitude to actually pull it off, but now I'm so grateful I did. Ignorance served me.
How do you personally define success? What does that mean to you?
I believe it's self-actualization, meaning a definition of what we believe our life's purpose to be. And once we define that, living into it. It's so funny, like no matter what the outcome is, if there is a financial win or even an impact on others or anything, the fact that I'm doing what I believe I need to be doing on this planet, it's so fulfilling. And maybe it's a bit of irony, the financial impact is the greatest when you do that, it seems. The social impact is the greatest when you do that, it seems. So success to me is being yourself to your fullest.
Based on that definition, do you consider yourself to be successful?
Oh, wildly successful. Yeah. Dude, I get up every morning like, I cannot believe I'm doing this. I can't believe I'm being on Jason's show today to talk about this stuff. Like, it's amazing. And I can't believe I'm going to be writing a book later this afternoon. It's pure joy for me. Listen, it's not like there's not moments of struggle and like, I could take a couple weeks off now. But I just feel so called to do this. In the past, I think I was running toward something, trying to find what it is. Now I'm being pulled towards something, and that's a much more powerful gravitational force.
That's a very interesting perspective. Instead of running towards something, you feel like you're being pulled towards something.
Yeah.
Is that what you?
That's exactly
what you said? It. That's deep, Mike. That's good. Because I think a lot of us as entrepreneurs, we start off running and chasing something. And when we find the thing that we really, we really wanted, it pulls us. We don't have to chase it anymore. So if you're chasing, maybe you're still in the struggle. You haven't figured it out yet.
Yeah. I do almost feel like when I was running toward things, there was a burn. There was this burning of energy, and it was exhausting. And I didn't necessarily get there. And even if I did, it was exhausting. The pull is like, it's just so much more in flow. There's effort, but it just feels so easy and just zink, and I move so much faster.
So as we get ready to kind of wind down our conversation today, I want you to put your advisor hat on. I mean, you're obviously, you've got tons of advice in all the books, your Profit First, Clockwork, Pumpkin Plan, and then All In with your newest book. And you're writing for Wall Street Journal. You're the business makeover expert for MSNBC. As that expert advisor, what is your one piece of advice that you would give to the listeners who are entrepreneurs? They're just trying to figure crap out, just like we all are. What one piece of advice do you think they need more than anything else?
So this is going to sound so absurd. Don't listen to my advice or any expert's advice. listen to the advice of the customer first. And I think we hear what the external experts are saying, and I believe I give good advice, but I don't understand the context of the customer. So if you're an entrepreneur and you say, well, such and such authority said that, and another authority said this, so clearly that's it. Is that in congruence with what the customer wants? Because they are the ultimate authority. So whatever you're selling or offering or providing, see if it lands with your customer. And they speak the loudest, not through their words, but through their wallets. So pay attention to their spending patterns and behavior. I think the greatest education is there. Absolutely, it can be rounded out and smoothed out by expert advice, but always start with the customer, not the expert.
Well, Mike, it's an honor to have you on the Root of All Success. I've been a huge fan of yours ever since I stumbled across that podcast years ago. We have met in person. You spoke at an event in Chattanooga back in, I think in 2019. We met briefly, but you're the real deal. And I would say that everybody needs to go check you out. It's MikeMichalowicz.com. And that's, the last name is Michalowicz. So you can play that back. You just hit the 15-minute reverse.
Yeah,
play that back.
But there's a shortcut. You can go to Mike Motorbike, as in the motorcycle, MikeMotorbike.com, because no one can spell Michalowicz. That's easy. Yeah. And then you can find him on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn. He's all over the place. Pick up a copy of Profit First. I know he's written other books, but that one, if you want to get your financial health in place, do that. And then also, go check out Relay Bank at therealjasonduncan.com/relay, because it'll help you implement the things you learn. Mike, I'm going to give you the last word before I do the stuff I got to say at the end of every show, but you get the last word today before we close out. Sure. Your clients are starving for your success. In fact, they want you to be wildly profitable. We were talking about profit just now. And they'll never say, can you charge me more? Can you rip me off a little bit? But they will say, I want your undivided attention. I want the best of your product and the best of your services. And the only way you can deliver that is if you're profitable. So even your clients want you to be wildly profitable.
So big thanks to Mike for being on the show today. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in to the Root of All Success. It's an honor to bring this show to you every day. We do 2 releases a week on Mondays and Fridays. So this is episode number 243. There are 242 other shows that you can go back and listen to. Some are not as good as others, but if you go listen to episode 51, you'll see my first conversation that I had with Mike, and go check out his stuff. And listen, if you're an entrepreneur and you're trying to learn, which is why you're listening to this, you've got to put this stuff in action. We could talk about this until we're blue in the face, but if you don't go do what Mike teaches in his books, you don't go do what you learn about on podcasts like this, nothing's going to matter. So go take action today. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you for being here. If you haven't subscribed to the show, if you haven't left a review, that means the world to us as podcasters, because it puts us in front of more people. So if you're listening and you haven't subscribed yet, you haven't left a review, please just take a minute. It doesn't cost anything, and it's a big, big deal. So thank you for being here. I am the real Jason Duncan, and as always, Jesus is King.
Thank you for listening to another edition of The Root of All Success with the real Jason Duncan. If you've enjoyed this week's episode, visit therootofallsuccess.com to access the show notes and other helpful resources. Follow Jason on social media at The Real Jason Duncan. See you again next time here on The Root of All Success.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.